Hi family, just a postscript to the flights grounded video, a little more background. Let's see if I can go in a chronological order here. If I mention any terms in the video that you're not familiar with, I would just say to try and look for the information online, because for the purpose of brevity of this video, I want to avoid, going into extenuating details. So we'll go from the market crash of 2008, the last orchestrated market crash of 2008, and shortly following that, among other things, we saw a bunch of CEOs stepping down and boards of directors of companies and corporations being dismantled and everything being basically, for lack of a better word, put out of business, like in the traditional sense that they were in business before, whether it was providing a financial service or transportation service or some sort of product or good or account or whatever the case may be. That premise was removed because the companies were basically dismantled and placed into receivership. An illustration of being placed into receivership, you could say, for instance, is where a company goes bankrupt, or a corporation goes bankrupt, and but it's still allowed to continue to operate in bankruptcy while another company holds that former corporation in what's called a holding company. So the holding company has no obligation to provide the services that the prior company or corporation before that had done. They're just allowing it to continue operations until such a time as it goes completely pear-shaped and completely out of business. That's basically what a holding company is. And when the CEOs and the boards of directors stepped down after the 2008 market crash, it took about, I'm going to say 4 years, but by the end of 4 years, every bank, every financial institution, every multinational corporation, everything you would think of was placed into receivership of these holding companies. Then, fast forward to July 4th, 2019, and the United States Corporation was dismantled and itself placed into receivership. Of course, all of the assets, including your national airlines, were likewise gobbled up in this consolidation and placing the corporation in receivership. July 4th, 2019, that was. And then I believe it was in October, down here in Mexico, October of the same year, I received notification of a bankruptcy for Aeromexico, which was the national airlines down here in Mexico. And they were being consolidated into Delta Airlines, which is then reconsolidated into another group, and then from the group it's consolidated by a holding company. So that was October 2022. That's when it started. Sorry. And then by October of 2022, all the proceedings for the bankruptcy and the consolidation of the Aeromexico, let's say in this instance, were completed. And I took a flight about 5 months later in February 2023, so almost 3 years ago. I took a flight with Aeromexico, and I noticed, because I pay attention to my surroundings, And I noticed that, on the side of the airplanes where they post their logos on the side of the airplanes that say this is Delta Airlines or it's operated by this airline or something like that. Just usually you can see some logo on the side of the aircraft as you're coming down the catwalk and you're about to get on the plane, and you can see, like, I don't know, there's a gap between the bridgeway and the actual aircraft, and you can see a portion of the fuselage of the aircraft. And you can see these logos, right? That it's either a Aeromexico flight, or it's a Aeromexico flight operated by whatever other carrier is operating the service. So I noticed that those logos had disappeared, and there were new logos that had been put in place. And I took a picture of it, and then immediately whoever it was on the catwalk working for the airport, one of the zombie badge-wearing lunatics that works in the airport, said, "No, you're not allowed to take pictures of the airplane." And I don't even think she understood what I was taking a picture of. It was just the logos. I'm not taking a picture of the entire airplane. I'm taking a picture of the logos that you have printed right here on the side of your airplane, which are clearly visible to those who are boarding the flight. So I presume it's okay for us to see those. It's also okay for us to take a picture of those. And then I didn't take any more pictures after that, but I wasn't going to erase the photo. So I still have that photo. I don't have any video editing skills where I can drop photos inside the video. But what I'll try to do is put a thumbnail to the video, so maybe you can see the logos that I'm referring to. But basically, it's illustrating exactly what I'm saying about corporations going into receivership and into holding companies that care not whether your flight takes off and lands safely, that care not about whether you receive any goods or products or services that you have paid for, that care only about money, and so they're not only receiving any money that in this case Aeromexico had been previously making, but their all their future sales, their tickets that they buy, the baggage fees, this, that, and the other, that's all going to the holding company. That's one thing. And then at the same time, these holding companies, because now they can say we're a holding company and this is an asset of our holding company, so we can put it in an ETF and we can treat it as though it's a fund, like a hedge fund, and we can take bets on it, right? And literally they are betting on whether or not the plane will fall out of the sky. They are betting on whether or not the plane will even take off at all, if it'll be grounded and stuff. Like everything is up for bets. And now, so I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about, say, the boots on the ground. Why? Because there's no such thing as a company or a corporation that's looking to provide you with a service or a good or a product or even transportation. But rather, it's quite a risky bet, if you get on a plane especially. And I wanted to provide you with a little bit of background with regards to, the international geopolitics and finance and corporate, maneuvers and things like this. So like I said, I'll try to put this logo that I saw on the side of the Aeromexico flight in February 2023. I'll try to put that in the thumbnail so you can see exactly what I'm referring to. when I say that there's no more companies or corporations, that there are only funds that are traded, and the operations of said companies, like in this case, say Aeromexico or any airline, presumed to be to operate flights. They're literally taking bets on whether or not the flight will operate or not, whether the flight will take off or land. It's just all a big game. Yeah, and I suppose it actually is all a big game, but yeah, I also suppose that if you're trying to fly somewhere, you should know about these things and why these issues are presenting from a boots on the ground perspective. Now, in addition to that, of course, there's the other things that I've mentioned in my first, I guess you call part one of this Flights Grounded. And also I mentioned it in a couple of other videos. They might be included in the playlists called Illustrations of a Frustrated and Deleterious Artificial Intelligence. Maybe there might be one or two videos in another playlist called I Could Tell You But I Have to Kill You. I don't know. And then there's probably maybe now some other people talking about it. Yeah, that's in addition to that boots on the ground geopolitical maneuvering. There's also the issue of the so-called solar flare activity, which is going to infiltrate and cause many disruptions to the artificial intelligence grid writ large. Planes being grounded is one of them. What'll be next is, you could just fill in the blank, all these devices that we use, right, to access the internet, to do online banking, to go online and pay bills, to do whatever, check your email, whatever you do online, right? Those are also dependent upon this artificial intelligence infrastructure, be it space-based or terrestrial-based. The smaller devices and appliances might continue to operate for a little bit longer. Even our cars, are all, like any car that's made after, like, say, 1980, I think it was any car after 1986, comes with an electronic engine. That means your car won't start. And just things like that. So that's kind of like long term. I want to say long term, but that's first you'll see like the planes falling out of the sky or the planes being grounded, and then there'll come what will be pitched as either a solar flare that no one had anticipated or could have shielded anything against. Or they'll, for the purpose of creating more chaos, so they can create more of their orderly wars all over the planet, and just the ridiculousness of it, the wars and the rumors of wars, that it'll be blamed on China or Russia or whoever they'll blame it on, to say somebody initiated a cyber attack, and that's the reason why your bank accounts were wiped out, because it's all digital now, isn't it? There's no more physical branch that you can walk into. There's no more bank, brick and mortar facility that you can go and make a withdrawal or a deposit. Everything's digital now. All of it's digital. Every form of currency these days are moving more and more towards digital. because in that way it's easier to steal it or embezzle the funds and recapitalize the too big to fail banks with a delete key, and poof, there goes your account. And then there's no liability because there's no culpability. That's basically to say that there's no way to say, yea, verily, it is the fault of, and point the finger at whoever you believe it's the fault of, why your bank account said it had $500 in it yesterday and today it says zero. Or maybe your business account had $50,000 in it yesterday and today it says zero. I don't know. Maybe your IRA account said you had $350,000 in there and today it says zero. That kind of thing. And then in this way they can just, hey, wasn't us, that we didn't do anything, it was a solar flare or it was a cyber attack. And there was no way we could have prevented it, right? But look, we have a solution. Oh yeah, there's always a solution that follows the problem, isn't it? Problem, reaction, solution, right? And so the solution, I don't know, would be to just allow everybody to suffer in misery, not having any form of exchange, any form of currency to do exchange and barter and buy and sell and trade. And let that go on for a while, and then maybe introduce something else. I don't care really. Honestly, I don't care what the so-called elite have planned. I don't care what the so-called elite solution is to the problem that they've created. I don't care. I have my own solutions. We have our own solutions. And, you know, that's what a problem is. It's just a solution waiting to be implemented. So, the solutions to the aircraft that can't fly because they can't use because maybe they can't even start their engines, I don't know, but maybe they can start their engines and get airborne, but then their instrument flight rules or their IFR systems are failed. And so then the only aircraft that can really fly, if they can get off the ground, would be your smaller aircraft, and they would have to go VFR, visual flight rules. That means they could not count on any, GPS-based or any other computer-based way to navigate the aircraft that relies upon this artificial intelligence grid that's being basically destroyed with the solar flares and the plasma events. That'd be it. And then, but hell, why not have some anti-gravity vehicles? Because we could operate those outside of the artificial intelligence grid. We don't need that grid to operate anti-gravity vehicles, and all our anti-gravity vehicles could likewise be operated VFR. I mean, you don't need to fly 36,000 feet in the air. If you're just going to the supermarket down the street, you just hover, I don't know, however much, like maybe 3 or 4 meters off the ground, I don't know, just enough to hover over whatever it might be sitting on the ground, houses and stuff like that, and go down to your grocery store like that. And currency, for sure. I've mentioned this in many videos, but hemp and mycelium, just those two raw materials, and not to mention hundreds of thousands of others, if not millions or billions of other raw materials and things that we can work with in this regard, could literally provide every single consumer, retail, wholesale, industrial, and commercial product and good on the global market. It could provide. So hey, if those raw materials can run the global economy, then and by the way, they can do it in clean, renewable, regenerative ways, not sustainable. I hate that word, sustainable economy, sustainable. You know what's sustainable? If you're running like say you're a marathon runner and you're going to go run a 30K marathon, well, you can probably sustain overall, on average, over the 30 kilometers, you can probably sustain, if you're like the top of the athletes, you could probably sustain an 8-minute mile, is what we would call running a mile in 8 minutes. But if it's a 30-kilometer race, there's quite a few miles in that. But by the end of the 30-kilometer race, you collapse. And in many cases, you need to be taken into medical care to be rehydrated because your body's just, it was able to sustain it, but, at some point, it can't, right? And it has to collapse and be restored. So that's the difference between sustainable and renewable. And something that's renewable would be something that's sustainable is to fill the gas tank with jet fuel and to fly this many miles, and then the plane has to be refueled, then the plane has to come down for maintenance, and then it has to come down for, how do you say, just check all the engines and stuff and make sure everything's still operational before it resumes the flight wherever it's going to next. That's sustainable. Anti-gravity vehicle that doesn't run on any of that could be self-renewing, regenerative kind of energy that it uses to hover, and so we don't have to worry about that kind of stuff, right? So these things that can run our global economy, well, they too are renewable and regenerative, and they have value. And if something has value, then why shouldn't it be the thing which backs our currency? When you think about what backs a currency, gold or silver, or I don't know, oil, or I should say, how it says on the back of the dollar bill, in God we trust. God would be gold, oil, and drugs. So all of these commodities which the currency is in theory based in, which right now I can only see one, possibly two currencies on the entire planet that are backed in something tangible. And the rest is just debt-based fiat. So if we can all generate our own raw materials and goods and services and economies writ large, using commodities that are not controlled by the market manipulators, then those currencies or those things could back our currency. All right, I already talked about that in a couple of other radios, so I won't expand into that anymore. But I'm just wanted to point it out because for the purpose of saying that when one door closes, another one opens, and also to remind you that there's no such thing as a problem. There's only a solution that's waiting to be implemented. And also to state another Captain Obvious moment is that there's a smarter way to do things. There's always another way to do things, but there's a smarter, better, faster, healthier, more beautiful way to do things. And just because their systems are collapsing doesn't mean we need to go without, basically. But for now, I would say do not get on any flights. If your flight is not grounded, then it probably is one of the flights that's being allowed to go, and they're taking bets on it to see if it'll fall out of the sky. That's it. And I hope the JPEG photo that I took in February 2023 of the logos that were pasted on the side of the airplane to Because it has to always be self-disclosure. They have to disclose it. They can't just do something that'll violate the free will without having received even your tacit consent. Well, look, we posted it on the side of the plane. We'd let you know that this plane is now a commodity on the stock market. If it takes off and lands, we have no liability for the passengers that might get killed on the flight, but there's going to be people that benefit from it because they're taking bets on it in the stock market. Hedge funds. All right, family, that's about it for now. I'll see you in the dream world. Yeah. Until then, ciao for now.